Hi guys. I'm filming on my computer today instead of my iPhone because I can't get my iPhone into a good position right now with the lighting and everything. It's not good when you have bad lighting, trust me. Um so I hope the computer camera works well enough for you guys. What I wanted to talk about today was uh the most common question I get asked, um especially in the business I'm in, is for people wanting me to explain my past life case. And by that I mean my most, quote, prominent past life case. And it's the one I wrote my book about. And I thought I would explain a little bit about um, who I was back then and how I came to realize that it was my past life. And I know that concept is a little difficult for some people to understand, but for a lot of us, it is extremely real. And it's not about being cool or being different. For most of us who have past life cases, it's a very traumatic thing because most of the time we remember the bad stuff over the good stuff, and it takes a lot of work to get to the good stuff. Um, Basically, the reason why people reincarnate is because they have a lot of lessons they need to learn in life, and you can't possibly learn everything in one lifetime. So each lifetime is like metaphorically speaking, it's like a different grade in school. You keep going and going and going until you graduate, and then you don't have to reincarnate anymore, and you can stay in the afterlife forever. And at that point, people become spirit guides, from what I can tell. It's it's an option. And basically, a spirit guide is a human spirit that attaches to a person at birth. It's usually agreed upon before the person is born, and that spirit guide teaches. Um, it's not always direct teaching, it's more like guidance, keeping you on your life path. And whether you listen or not is up to you. That's basically how it works. So, in my past life case, the one that people ask about all the time, I was Fanny Chamberlain a long time ago. We're talking the 19th century. And Fanny Chamberlain is someone who isn't really known on her own or on my own. Um, it's because of attachment, a marriage to Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, who was a Civil War officer on the Union side. He first started as a lieutenant colonel of the 20th Maine, and he slowly, well, not so slowly, he rose through the ranks, and he became a general by the end of the war. And he is rather famous in historical circles. If people don't study history, I don't think they would really know who he is unless they've seen the movie Gettysburg and the movie Gods and Generals. Jeff Daniels played him in both of those movies. Um, and in Gods and Generals, Fanny, his wife, me, was played by, what's her name? Mira Sorvino. She didn't look anything like me, Fanny, but she was pretty and she's a good singer, and that's how Hollywood works. But anyway, first I thought I would show you what Fanny looks like. So here she is. Okay, so let me give you some historical background on Fanny first. Fanny was born in 1825 in Jamaica Plain, Massachusetts. Her maiden name was Adams, and she was um, distantly related to John Adams and John Quincy Adams and that family. Um, when she was born, her parents were almost elderly, really. I mean, it was kind of like what I call a change of life baby. And they already had a bunch of other kids when she was born because her father had been married before. And they were a poor family, so it was decided, although the details are not very clear, it was decided that Fanny should live with relatives in Maine. And she was sent to live with Reverend George Adams and his wife, who were childless. And she came to know those people as her parents. Um, it's a very typical adoption story, but I don't really see a whole lot of adoption stories back then that turned out successfully like this, where the adopted child still had somewhat of a relationship with her biological family. Fanny went home when she was 13 for the first time to visit her biological family, and I have a letter from her biological mother, I think. I haven't looked at the letter in a long time, but I actually have a letter in my collection after that first visit, kind of scolding her for not writing back and that kind of thing, because she was being a typical teenager, and this is something that I still have a problem doing, which is keeping up with correspondence. I'm not good at that. I'm terrible at keeping up with correspondence. But anyway, uh, Fanny was one of those rare 19th century women who had a lot of independence and education, and she actually lived on her own for a while in her early 20s. And um, it was when her adopted mother was dying that she came home from living on her own in, quote, the big city. She was living in Portland. She was an artist. She came home because her mother died of cancer, and I believe it was cancer. And um, it wasn't long after that that she met Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, who was going to Bowdoin College, which is in the town of Brunswick where she lived. Uh, they had a long courtship. I think it was pretty long for the time, but um, she was older. She was older than him, and she was older than the general married woman at the time. Um, it was not a very favorable match by either side of their families. Uh, her father, her adoptive father, never thought he was good enough in the beginning, and his parents didn't seem to like her very much in the beginning either, but they stuck it out and they were together. Um, he started proposing rather early, and she refused him a few times, I think, before uh, before she finally accepted. But she didn't want to bring debt into the marriage. She still had to repay her father for her education. She was a music teacher, and she had to repay her father for the tuition for getting her music education. So she wasn't able to really find work in New England at that time that would have paid enough for her to repay that debt quickly. So she took a job in Georgia, which, hello, is where I live now. And she lived in Georgia for 3 years in Milledgeville with a couple of different families, teaching music and being the uh, musical director, I think it was called, of the Presbyterian Church, I want to say. And by the time she came back, 3 years is a long time for a couple to never see each other and only communicate by letters. So they had to sort of get to know each other again. But they got married as quick as they could in December of 1855, and quickly started having children and living that, idealistic domestic life, even though they weren't rich. Trust me, they were not rich. He was a college professor, brand new college professor, and, there were hard times financially and moving around to different places until they found a house, which is still standing today. You can Google it. It's the Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain House Museum, I think it's called, and it's owned by the Pejepscot Historical Society. And when the Civil War came, they had been married for 6 years and, had a good rhythm, a good life. Fanny had always had a problem with depression and abandonment for most of her life. So when the Civil War came, she was not in favor of him joining the army because, she didn't want him to leave and get killed. Because she had gone through a lot of death in her life. I'm skimming over a lot to try to keep this short, but he was wounded multiple times in the Civil War. One of those times was life-threatening, very life-threatening. It's practically a miracle that he came back alive. And by the time the war ended, he was not the same person. He probably had PTSD like his brother did, but in those days it was not um, a known thing. There was no way to be diagnosed with something that people didn't even know really existed as a medical condition yet. Um, I think in those days they called it battle fatigue, or they may have started saying battle fatigue by World War One. Um, and the war took a huge toll on the marriage, and they were separated um, for about a year in 1867 to 1868, somewhere in that area. And it was serious enough that Fanny was consulting divorce lawyers, like sort of on the sly behind his back. But the only way for her to get a divorce in those days was to claim spousal abuse or infidelity or abandonment or something serious of that nature. And there is some evidence that she was claiming spousal abuse, although there is no evidence to support that. And I can say that I don't believe there was any spousal abuse now. I think it was just trying to find a way out of a bad situation. But eventually the marriage did get back on track, and he became governor of Maine. He was reelected 4 times. And then in his later years, he was president of Bowdoin College and held various positions, some bad investments in real estate. Uh, he lost most of the family money um, somewhere in the 1880s, I want to say, in bad real estate investments, bad business investments, and so he was not really able to retire like most people would. He worked all the way up until he died, basically, and he died in 1914, and Fanny died in 1905. They had 5 children total, but only 2 of them lived into adulthood. One child was born prematurely, somewhere around 25 weeks, I think. I've tried to do the math. I think it was somewhere around 25 weeks, and that child only lived a couple of hours. And 2 other children died of scarlet fever in different outbreaks. Sorry about that. Um, and, you know, I know all of this now because I had to learn everything I could, but in actuality, I had all these memories back in the back of my head from the time that I was a toddler. Some of my first memories started to surface when I was about 4. I'm not entirely sure about my age, but I was not in school yet, and I was very young. Um, but I was old enough to understand what a dream was, so I think I was about 4, and I started having nightmares about Civil War Army hospitals. But I didn't know anything about that because I was 4. What 4-year-old knows about Civil War Army hospitals? All I knew was I was having nightmares about being a grown woman in a place surrounded by men, and a lot of them were hacked up and mutilated and dying, and there were other men doing terrible things to them. My little child mind interpreted doctors trying to treat these men as um, sort of like monsters, scary monsters, because back in those days, medical procedures were awful. Um, it's still even really hard to talk about. I don't really describe that very often. I described it in my book because it's much different writing it down than it is saying out loud. But as you can see, I have trouble finding the words to describe um, what I saw. And for a 4-year-old, that's really difficult to comprehend. And I didn't know how to tell my mother. I, sorry, I didn't know how to tell my mother. She knew I was having bad dreams and stuff, and she knew that she had to come and sleep with me sometimes, but there was no way for me to verbalize what was going on. Um, and I also had several dreams about a father figure abandoning the me as a child, but the difference was I was standing up and walking around, and I was also wearing heavy dresses. If you know me, I'm a quadriplegic. I can't get up and walk around. I have no idea what that feels like. But in those dreams of this father figure getting up and walking away and leaving me with these people, um, it was very, very foreign to me. But again, I didn't know what any of it meant. I thought I was just, well, at the time, I really didn't think anything of it other than this is scary, this is not me. And as I got older, more and more memories started happening. And it got to a point where in high school, I was really trying to suppress the whole thing and not let myself have those dreams because most of them were very repetitive and would come and go. For a few months, I would have them like every night, and then it would go away for, 6 months, sometimes a year, and then it would come back with a vengeance. And, um, I don't think I was ever really considered normal in high school, but this didn't this didn't help. And I never told anybody about it. I still didn't tell anybody about it. Um, when I was close to graduating, I may have already been graduated. I don't remember exactly when now. It's all totally timelined and detailed in my book, but I haven't really thought about this stuff since I put my book out because that was my cathartic way of trying to get it out of my system. But um, somewhere in 1999, 2000, that region of time, I think I was a senior in high school, I found a book in a store called Fanny and Joshua, and it was by a woman named Diane Monroe Smith. And in that book, on the cover was a photograph of Fanny and Lawrence. And I had never seen those people before, really. I didn't know anything about them, but I knew those were the people that I had been seeing in my dreams for my entire life. And it was one of those very strange, echoing, surreal kind of moments where you kind of feel like you're getting sucked into a tunnel. It's it's very hard to put it into words what happens when you recognize yourself from the past. It's almost like an echo is the best way I can describe it. And the physical sensation is like getting sucked into a tunnel almost. And I actually had to go outside and get some air. I didn't buy the book that day because it scared the crap out of me. It took me several more years to buy the book, and I didn't buy it myself. A guy I was dating at the time bought it after I kind of told him what was going on. So, long story short, I sort of forced myself to look into it because I decided I can either look into it and I can try to fix this repetitive cycle of nightmares and not feeling like myself, not feeling like I belong in this time, in this family. Um, or I could just try to ignore it for the rest of my life. But I knew ignoring it wasn't working because I was having severe anxiety issues, depression, sleep problems. I was very withdrawn. I only managed to keep a couple of friends in high school. I never really had big social gatherings. I never went to parties. I only went to prom because everybody else did. I didn't have a date, nothing like that. I was kind of a loner, and I just never felt normal. So after high school, growing into womanhood, you're trying to define yourself as a woman. Well, I knew part of who I was had to be connected with these nightmares and these dreams and these echoes and recognition of these people that I thought I had no idea who they were. So what I did was I wrote down several facts about Fanny that I had found in different books. These would be provable facts. And then I went back and looked at my journals where I was keeping records of my dreams and stuff, and I was looking to disprove the whole thing. I was looking to show myself that I had picked it up somewhere on television, or I picked it up somewhere in newspapers or books or something. I was trying to disprove it to myself because for most of my life I never believed in reincarnation. I thought it was new agey crap. You know, even though I did believe in ghosts, I had seen ghosts, I believed in them. But for some reason, reincarnation is kind of the redheaded stepchild of the paranormal world. So I didn't believe in it. And then what happened was I ended up matching every single fact with something that I had already dreamed about or had waking visions of or knew or, and so on and so forth. And there was no denying it by that point. I confided in my friend Janine, who has since passed away, and I also confided in my brother, and slowly but surely I started coming out about my story, and I realized that other people were having the same experiences with different past lives of theirs. And I came into contact with Jeffrey Keane, who wrote a book about his past life as Confederate General John Brown Gordon. And uh, John Brown Gordon and Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain became very close friends after the war. And they were friends for the rest of their lives. And we talked, and he convinced me that it's nothing that I should be ashamed of. I shouldn't hide it. Um, and I can use my story to help other people. So I started writing my book. And it took a long time to write the book. It took years because it was not only to help other people, but it was to help me get it out of my system, because um, a big part of past life studies for anyone looking into their past lives is to find a way to learn what you were supposed to learn about your past self and apply it into the present lifetime so that you don't get stuck in the past, because I know of a lot of people who get stuck and constantly obsessing about their past lives. And that's not what the point is. The point is to take the lessons from back then and apply them to now. And I go over all of the lessons that I took from my lifetime as Fanny and how I have tried to continue both learning and setting them aside in this lifetime to move on to new lessons. And once I finished the book and put it out there, it was like a shower. It's like a shower. You wash away all the grime and stuff you've collected throughout the day, except in this sense, it's 150 years of stuff that I've washed away. And most of my nightmares stopped. The new memories stopped coming, and I was able to get a better grip on who I am today. And that's why sometimes when people ask me, "Oh, do you remember this? Do you remember that?" Well, I may have written about it in the book because I remembered it at that time, but now that I've tried to put those things behind me, I can't so easily recall those memories anymore. And some people think that's a bad thing, but it's not. It's a blessing. It means you are moving on, and you are putting those old ghosts to bed so that you can live here and now and in the present and continue moving forward with the development of your soul and um, learning new lessons to grow as a celestial being. That's basically what we are. I don't believe in death as in it's over, you never see anyone again. It's just a transition to me. So I'm not afraid of death because I know it's just moving on to a different part of life, really. So basically, that's what happened and how I came to know my most prominent past life. Um, in that process, in learning meditation and um, learning to recount dreams and stuff, I also came into contact with a couple of other older lifetimes, and I'll talk about those in a different video blog because this one is already 20 minutes, more than 20 minutes, and I don't know if it's going to fit on YouTube. So, I'm going to show you a picture of the cover of my book and show you a link where you can get it if you would like it. Um, please feel free to ask me questions or anything like that if you need to. I'll leave my website down in the description, and there's a contact page, and you can ask me anything you need to ask. Um, Whatever hate mail comments, I don't care. I get everything. I get called a devil worshiper at least once a week by some strangers, so it doesn't even matter to me anymore. um, so I hope that somebody who needs help with their past lives out there will come across this video and maybe take something from it, take some hope that, you know, there are more of us out there like this. And a lot of us are in the closet, so to speak, but we are out there, and it's gonna be okay. It's scary, and you know, it causes a lot of problems in the here and now, but once you learn to balance it and put it to rest, it's a huge weight lifted off of you, and that's basically what's happened to me. So, you know, if you've made it through this video, congratulations and have a cookie. um, so, yeah, like I said, if you have any questions, just let me know. Talk to you guys soon. Bye.